All right, today I'm going to talk a little bit about Canadian spatial data and kind of give like a little bit of an overview on how it is doing right across the country. I work for Natural Resources right now, but I typically work in the East Coast, but during my career I've worked in every province and territory. So I've had opportunities to work with data and projects all along, and I kind of have a passion for it. And I'm sure most people here in the room here, I mean, most of us know how to get data for the projects that we're working on, because usually we work on regionalized projects. Like people in Nova Scotia don't typically need to know data in BC or Alberta. But I seem to have a passion for that, and it kind of led me to this path. And even though I still work in the East Coast, I still run a few websites, and I still get constant requests for people who want to know about township maps and stuff in Alberta. And of course, a lot of us have access to these modern map libraries, which have great extensive resources, so most of us aren't aware, but that's not always the case for everybody. And so that's kind of led to the open data concept, which is, you know, coming close to about over the past decade. And these days, almost every government level all across Canada, province-wide, national, and municipality, have various data portals. We're all trying to make them more innovative, but so you would think things are getting a little easier and better, but still people have a challenge finding data. So yeah, basically we've come a long way since Roger Thompson first started it, the GIS. I mean, every year the software developers, they're making the software that's better, more powerful, easier to use, it's easier to learn. Children are learning software to create maps. I recall when I first transformed over from making paper maps in geology to the digital world, how everything had to be coded. If you wanted a north arrow, you had to know how to code that. You didn't point and click. So we've come a long ways. And now it's come to the point where mapping tools that are out there are available to everyone. You don't have to be into cartography or GIS or science to make a map anymore. And it's transformed from the PC world to the internet. Everybody wants access to it, and now into the mobile devices. So everybody with a phone or any other GPS handheld unit, they've all got mapping. So basically things have come a long ways. Yeah, so like I said, my background allowed me to work in several provinces. I worked for PCI for a while, and we used to sell technical software to people. So instead of using the cookie cutter software that the developers want you to use, because I was in technical sales, it's always easier to make a sale if you can find local data that someone can relate to. You're trying to sell them the software, and you give the demo. If you're doing it in Alberta, don't use California data to show how stuff works, because chances are there's no bugs, but chances are people can't relate to the data. So doing that, I had the internet, as great as it is now, wasn't always that user-friendly. So I kind of created my own little data portal on some of my websites where I kind of gathered, if I worked in several provinces, I saved stuff so I wouldn't have to search for it again. And then a little bit later, I got into the LiDAR and aerial photography world, and that allowed me to travel all over Canada and North America, and doing a lot of field work and ground truthing and stuff. And you always had to have local data for that, and it wasn't always easy to find. And usually, like to do something, don't like to do the same thing twice. So I ended up making these personal data portals where I kept this collection of documents, survey data, vector data, raster, topo maps. And after I left that, I passed it along to somebody else, but then people still requested me and kind of called me the data guy. So I took a section of my website, Canadian GIS, and I dedicated it just to data resources. And there's one page there, and specifically, that it's got close to 200 different data resources listed on it. And the data is listed. It's municipal, provincial, federal. It's right across the country. Every province is listed on there. I didn't get too hung up on the open data concept, because some people, they really get into the open section. And so this section that I have on the site is more about what's freely available. The page gets about 1,000 visitors average a day. And I still get strange requests sometimes where people can't seem to find what they want, and they figure, I don't know if they figure out how to solve the data on themselves myself. But some of the biggest requests we get are for property data, aerial photography, small scale topographic, and a lot of LiDAR. And in fact, I found so many LiDAR resources that I actually had to spin off a second page. So now I've got a second page of just where to find LiDAR as it gets more and more available. And like I said, now I work in Atlantic Canada, so I don't have the opportunity to do a lot of stuff out west, although I still help people with nonprofit do some mapping. So I've opened it up, and a lot of the stuff that's on there now is crowdsourced, so people actually will send me data, send me an email saying this doesn't work anymore, can you change it to this? So it's kind of interesting how what I started has appeared on like so many school, university pages, and people actually want me to keep going through with it. So pretty encouraging. Last fall, Google released a what they call a data set search tool. It's a data tool. It's their way of trying to, I think they copied their Scholar research portal, and it searches Google schema or uses Google schema to search metadata from data portals from all over the world as a way to make things more efficiently. And kind of a one-stop shop to find data. The concept is really great. However, I find it's only as good as the metadata is there. We all know that metadata is something that's hard to hammer home. And for example, I did a few search tests, and you search New Brunswick, you'll find tons of federal data sets up here, and maybe something from Moncton, but you won't find any data from the provincial portal, which is kind of strange. So I kind of thought, well, okay, that's maybe one case. So I've done a few other tests, and even for Halifax, for example, if you search Halifax, you'll find tons of provincial data that has Halifax in the metadata, and federal data, there's nothing from the Halifax data portal. So until everybody gets on the same page, a tool like this, hit and miss. But it is still pretty good. When people do request data, sometimes I do check it. You put the search in and it gives you a long selection on the left-hand side. So it's a great concept, but it's got a bit way to go. Another confusing concept that I find when I run into people is with federal data. I work for the federal government, but I'm not involved. But they often frustrate me the most. They quite often when they change links, they never forward to the new link, and you can never find anything. Bookmarks never works, etc. So we first had the Geobase data portal. I think it started in 2003. Everybody thought it was a federal website. It was a federal website, but it wasn't federal data. Geobase data it was a collaboration from CCOG and several organizations. So it was provincial, federal, municipal, not just federal departments. It was federal, Canada Post, everything. So it was multiple investors, parties, and it was more intended for the spatial infrastructure and standards. And then NRCan came along, and they came up with the Geogratis, which was another federal portal that we had for basically it was any place to find data that NRCan had, and it also had found documents, papers, stuff like that. So, but they coexisted at the same time. And then I believe around 2011, we came up with the federal government came up with the Open Data Portal, which housed open data. But all of a sudden now you have 3 or 4 portals on the go. The same data didn't exist in each one, so sometimes people would look in one, couldn't find one, didn't know the other. So obviously we had multiple issues, multiple sources to find data. Now Geobase portal and Geogratis have been shut down. They both still exist, but now all that data has been funneled to the Open Data Portal. So if you're still looking for Geobase data, it's still maintained with the same standards. The provinces and everything still maintain it, but you find it through the Open Data Portal. And Geogratis still exists. The data is also through the Open Data. There's also FTP access and a few other things. But at the federal level, a lot of the key data sets or a higher resolution, not a higher resolution, but a higher scale, so larger scale. So if you're talking about larger areas, so you're looking at the federal level stuff like road data, the hydro network. You still have the NTS map sheets. There's a new NRCan that's trying to do a new elevation strategy where they want to get 1 to 5 meter DEM across the whole country. So elevation data is obviously where you go for that. Satellite data, and they're adding stuff like LiDAR, building footprints. And like I said, almost all the provinces have their own data portals. If they're not an open data portal, they'll have some source of geospatial data online. The trouble is, they all offer different levels of service. They have different types of data on each portal, so they don't all have the same standards. And the service will range from province to province. So some provinces will provide basic data, while others might go well beyond providing LiDAR, aerial photography, and whatnot. Newfoundland opened a data portal in 2016. It doesn't have a lot of data on it, probably about 100 data sets. And oddly enough, probably less than 10 to 15% of that actually has a geographic component. When I was at Geomatics Atlantic conference a few years ago in Newfoundland, I found it interesting because they had quite a few presentations on municipality and GIS, because a lot of municipalities in Newfoundland are small. Like if you're living outside St. John's, you're living in a small outport town, and a lot of the municipalities don't have GIS because they're so small, and then they're worried about maybe having a better fire department than they are with having mapping data. So in Newfoundland, I find data is always hard to come by unless you really know where to go. For example, searching the data portal, if you want road data, you won't find anything in William. So if you don't know what you're looking for, and you may think it doesn't exist. But they do have a pre-abundance of pre-made maps and some pretty good online mapping applications around the city of St. John's and that. Nova Scotia's done pretty good with their data portal. They've tried to pump through most of their data through there. But just like Newfoundland, there's multiple places to find data. They still have a few hiccups, like they have some LiDAR data that's in the LiDAR data that's in the open data portal. However, they have another separate application called an elevation data extractor, where they have almost half the province's phone with free LiDAR, and it's not in the open data portal. So if you go to the portal and you search LiDAR, you might find 6 or 7 municipalities. In reality, they have half the province covered. And most of the cities are starting to get on board. PEI started a data portal last year, and unlike Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, they've done a pretty good job of funneling almost all their data through there. They have province-wide LiDAR coverage, but it's available for, they don't provide it for free. And they do a 10-year land use program every 10 years, and they have aerial photography, and once that 10-year cycle is gone, they release all their historic data. So you can get the aerial photography dating back right to 1935. New Brunswick has done pretty good at funneling. They're probably the best. They're not considered an open data portal, but they've put almost all their geographic data through there. Then they have, actually one of their things they're bragging on now is they're providing LiDAR data for the whole province. You can download free through an application that they've created. There's a mix of photography and air photography. Some of it's free, some of it's not. Depends on where you go. And all the cities there have started to get on the open data concept. Quebec is one of the earlier pioneers of open data. You can find a wide range of formats. Data there. Downside is usually you got to speak French or be able to read French to know what you're looking for. They're not bilingual. And they've got more than 15 municipalities that provide data. But a couple years ago, they moved a lot of them had individual style portals, and they moved all to the provincial data with their sub-portals. So people still search there and they say they can't find anything, but they're not necessarily working and searching the right thing. Ontario has always bragged about providing data for free. I think they say back in the 80s they used to do it before the open data concept. On their portal they have over 600 data sets listed, but then they also have a disclaimer that it's not all open, and some of it's not, so I'm not really sure why they're listed in their data portal. Ontario, just like the federal government, has multiple places to find data, so if you don't find what you're looking for, not to get frustrated, it's probably on another site. And Ontario has a lot of data that's available, but not necessarily available online. Quite often there's contacts you can find that they provide. There's a lot of data in southern Ontario that's available that you can get. It's through different formats, like providing someone with a hard drive, and they'll send it back with the data on it. And some of the power of the data in Ontario is that there's over 35 municipalities that have their own data portal. So sometimes if you don't find what you're looking for at the provincial level, federal level, chances are you find better data at the municipal level. Manitoba, similar situation. They have multiple places to find provincial data. They don't really have what they call an open data portal. They've got the Manitoba Land Initiative, which is quite a few resources, and if there's anything that's geology related, it's often on the geoscience side. I've done a few projects there, and found a pretty extensive collection of ortho photography from usually in the southern half of the province. And we seem to be finding more and more LiDAR data around the watersheds in the south that are available. Saskatchewan's similar to Manitoba. A lot of people get frustrated. You get their requests because they say they can't find data. Saskatchewan, the data's there. Quite often it's not free unless you know where to find it. Again, there's a lot of LiDAR becoming available, mostly in the southern where the agriculture is. And I find Saskatchewan's a little bit like Newfoundland, where the data's not available. Data's not as easy to come by, but pre-made maps and online mapping applications that work with the data for the general public are more than easy to come by. Alberta, another pioneer in the open data portal. They've, I think the last time I gave a presentation at the CCA thing, they first came out, they've got over 2,400 data sets from multiple sources. They have different websites as well. They also have a few places to find it, and but bottom line is it's there if you know how to find it. In British Columbia, probably everybody here knows more about it than I do, but they're one of the earlier pioneers in the open data world. They kind of set the standard for the other provinces to find. The Data BC program, can't say too much about it, but it's a great, I always recommend if someone comes to me and they can't find something, I send them to there to start. And you obviously have an abundance of cities and municipalities that are all doing all working hard to provide the data. And again, same as Ontario. Sometimes if you don't find what you want at the larger level, that's to search the municipals. And that's it in a nutshell.